Hi guys, it's Elisa at Cottage Homesteading, and today I'm showing you how I make sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is a really easy ferment to make. It's delicious, it's good for you, and it's a great addition to have on any plate. I've already washed my hands and I haven't used an antibacterial soap. I don't use them anyway. But if you do use antibacterial soaps, make sure when you're making ferments that you don't use them before that, because you want the bacteria in this. You don't want to kill it. Not all bacteria is bad. So for this process, just use normal soap and water. I've got my cabbage. It's about 1.5 kilograms, which is 3 pounds 7 ounces. I have removed the outer leaves. Now this is organic, obviously. Don't use one from the supermarket that's just a normal one that's got chemicals on it, because that can inhibit the growth of your bacteria in the fermentation process, and you want it to work. So use an organic one, buy an organic one, spend the extra money because it is worth it. Now you can use whatever colour cabbage you want, it doesn't matter. Save a couple of leaves for the top of your jars to weight down the ferment so the chopped cabbage doesn't float up. And you can also buy these weights, and they're from WEC and they're fantastic. I love them. But if you don't have one of those, you can use a cabbage leaf. We'll cut the cabbage in quarters. And remove the hard white core. And then you can use a food processor, a mandolin, or even a knife to chop up the cabbage as finely as possible. I've chopped up half the cabbage. My bowl's only got room for half a cabbage, so I'll be making it in 2 batches. So to this half batch, I'm going to add just under 1.5 tablespoons of sea salt. It's basically 1.5 tablespoons for every kilogram, and I've got less than 1 kilogram in this bowl. With clean hands, massage the salt into the cabbage, really breaking up the fibres of the cabbage. It brings all the juices out of the cabbage and gets that salt mixed in really well. The fresher your cabbage, the more juicier it will be, which makes this process so much easier. If you're making a huge batch, you can use a big saucepan and get your rolling pin out and give it a really good bash. That really breaks the fibres up. I massaged that for about 10 minutes, and now I'm going to add it into my sterilised mason jar. And I use a quart jar because I can fit my hand in. So I press the cabbage down to make sure there's no air in it as I pack the jar. Now make sure you put all the cabbage underneath the juice, because you don't want it to go mouldy. If it's above the juice, it will go mouldy. What you could do is you could add a little bit of water, salty water, on top, just so that it's definitely covered. And you want about 1 inch, 1.5 inch headspace, depending on the size of jar that you're using. Use your glass weight, push it down so that it's covered in the liquid, or you can use your cabbage leaf. Clean up the rim of the jar so that there's no bits of cabbage or juice up the top. Now there's a little bit extra space there, so I am going to add some salty water to that. To make the salt water, I add in half a cup of filtered boiled water, dissolve 1 teaspoon of fine salt, and once that's dissolved, I'll add in the other half a cup of cold filtered water so that it's not too hot when I pour it over my sauerkraut. Now they're both filtered because you don't want any additives in your water. And if you're on town water like me, that would include chlorine and it could include fluoride, I think. I'm not really sure, but we filter it so it's not in there anyway. So to that, I'm going to top this up so I have about 1 inch of headspace. And that just keeps all the cabbage underneath. Now if you're going to use the leaf, so just cut it down a little bit. Yeah, that's about the right size, and we'll just trim those corners off. And then that would fit in nicely. And then all the liquid could be on top and the cabbage would be underneath, making sure that none of those bits of cabbage stick out. So that's perfect. So I could use that instead of the glass weight. Next, you can put a lid on, and then you've got to burp it every day. So taking the lid off every day so that the gases can escape, because ferments build up gases and you don't want it to be leaking ferment out of the side of the jar. So you want to let those gases escape. I use pickle pipes because I do a fair amount of fermenting, so it's worth the investment. It has a little hole in the top and it can let the gases escape without letting the air in, and I don't have to do anything. And that just fits on the jar, and we place a canning ring on top. So now that can sit on the shelf out of direct sunlight until it's ready. So now all we need to do is let the microorganisms work their magic. I'm going to place this on a shelf out of direct sunlight for about 3 to 6 weeks. Knowing when your ferment is ready is dependent on a few things: the room temperature and personal choice of how you like your ferments. In summer, when it's warmer, ferments happen a lot quicker. Usually test every second day, have a little taste to see what you like. You want a bit of crunch in it, but you want it to be sour. So play around with it, taste it, see what you think. Once it's ready, you place a lid on it. You can take your glass weight out of it, making sure your cabbage is kept under the juice. Place your lid on it and put it in the fridge. It will continue to ferment very slowly once it's in the fridge, and it can last up to 18 months easily. I haven't had any problems with them in the fridge, and I know people have left them even longer, but generally we eat them before that anyway, so we're not really doing long-term experiments, but I do know that 18 months is still good to go. Unless you're seeing black mold in your ferments, then you know you've got a problem. When you're using your ferments, always use a clean spoon to get your sauerkraut out so that you're not cross-contaminating and introducing other foods into it, because that can make it go mouldy. It's a great way to preserve cabbages from the garden, and definitely good for your health. All that good gut bacteria that you're going to be introducing into your diet. But it tastes good, so that's probably the best reason to enjoy it. If you want to see some of my other preserving videos, then check out the playlist. And if you've got any questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.